Hi, my name is Chloe Sullivan, and before I begin my speech, I'd like to ask my audience a few questions. So have you ever known someone that has been incarcerated? When you think back to that person, did they come from a low-income family, or did they come from poverty themselves? And for my final question, have you ever seen a juvenile facility in a well-developed suburban area? Now, the reason why I ask these questions is to prompt us into discussing my topic today, which is the poverty to prison pipeline. In this speech, I will tell you all what the poverty to prison pipeline is and why it's prevalent in our society. So now for my first point. What is the poverty to prison pipeline? So the poverty to prison pipeline is an idea that supports the intersection of poverty and imprisonment rates. So in essence, if an individual grows up in an impoverished community, they are more likely to lead a life of crime and be imprisoned. Now let's bring it back to our state. So according to a 2021 census done by the DCFS, 53.47% of all juvenile offenders were either at or below the poverty line before their incarceration, or before their imprisonment, sorry. Now let's compare that to the national statistic. So 80% of all individuals that have been incarcerated have either experienced poverty or are currently living in poverty. So now this leads us into our second point. Why is the poverty to prison pipeline a thing, and why is it so prevalent in our society? So, for context, the poverty to prison pipeline was created to explain the mass incarceration rates in a country, specifically the United States. So this graph is from a study that was conducted by the Brennan Center for Justice, which compares all of the top nations in the world and their prison rates. So for every 100,000 civilians, 665 individuals will be incarcerated or have been incarcerated in their lifetime. And as you can see, this is disproportionate to the rest of the graphic in all the other countries in the world. So why is this such a problem in our country? So mass incarceration can be linked to the civil rights movement, as prior to 1979, many individuals that were incarcerated either did less time or their offense was more severe. However, after 1979, it can be observed that many individuals go to prison for crimes that aren't violent, and they serve sentences that are very disproportional to their crime. So this can be linked to a lot of different things. But also education plays a major factor in this, because individuals who grow up in low-income communities, they receive less adequate of an education, and their learning is not reinforced by their family members, so they're a lot more susceptible to crime, as well as manipulation from police officers, and so on and so forth. So in conclusion, the poverty to prison pipeline is an idea that connects poverty to imprisonment by making it an endless cycle where if an individual grows up in poverty, they will be faced with imprisonment for the rest of their lives. And this can also be linked to the cradle to prison theory, which is essentially the same thing, but it just establishes from birth an individual faces higher risks of being incarcerated due to their race or economic background. And why it's so prevalent in our society is due to the mass incarceration of individuals to counteract the civil rights movement. So now for my final piece, I would like you all to think about the ways that we can help the individuals that are facing this major threat to their lives and to their communities. Thank you.